day in the neighborhood, a creepy day in the neighborhood. Would you not procreate, please? Yes, it's a favor to me. Anyway, I'm responding to, I think, some comments, or just some general videos. I don't know. So anyway, there's some guy who did, that guy, what's his face? He posted some Schopenhauer, and there was one little interesting thing, a quote thingy I liked, where he used some, it's very well-written stuff. Some of it's bullshit, but some of it's well-written. But just this whole idea, I was thinking of cliches, and so I was kind of looking for cliches, little symbolisms. And there was some little line in there about the present and the past. I mean, the future. I mean, your life is basically just a magnification of the past, or something like that. I mean, it's just it's like a running present. You're just a combination. You're just a collection of present moments, present experiences, and I sort of like that idea. Way of seeing it. And I would sort of argue that if you mixed all of them together, you don't get a good color overall. And it's the whole bad apple thing. One bad apple ruins the pie. So there's a cliche, or whatever it is, a mommyism. And I think that has some learning value in it. You can gain some education from that kind of perspective and applying it to understanding what happens when we live, and that the negatives do have this very powerful weight, and the positives have very little weight outside of our perception. I mean, outside of the fact that we think we really need something, we really, in fact, don't need these things often. That's just a delusion in our head that we need them, and it's created psychology to make us play the game. And as I'm finding out, kind of with this new depression thing I have, is that this is kind of a different depression than my usual ones. That it does seem like it's really based on the fact that I have modified my thinking enough to really change how I look at desire and what I have desired, and I'm sort of becoming, it really is just, when you eat away at those motivating trivialities of accomplishment that you need, and getting some. Once you get rid of that stuff as an urgent thing, or as a dominant player in your psychology, you're not left with much. There's very little to compensate for the shit. But anyway, that's a whole separate from where I really wanted to go, which was a comment by I'm not gonna remember her name now. Some S name, H something, I don't know. Anyway, I just didn't care for the way she put it. She referenced the cliche, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And then she made some sort of crack, like in my video I was implying that somehow history should be modified, to our liking. And there was nothing in my video about that. I was merely uttering the fact that there's a lot of life that can appear quite useless to my psychology. A lot of human experience, a lot of stuff, a lot of crap that goes on that I frankly, just as a psychology, couldn't give a shit about. And that's I was only talking about a psychological phenomenon more than a philosophical one. But whatever. If people don't get it, they don't get it. I did say in the video it was a little bit, I was pushing the perceptual envelope a little bit, and trying to deal with something pretty complex as a theory of thought. I had a lot of lot of components to it, and I'm sitting there trying to describe it in a video, which is really hard to do unless you do it really carefully. So anyway, maybe it was my failure. But I just found it's almost obnoxious, that you would imply that I suggested somewhere in the video that we change history to suit what we want to learn or that we want to think. And then she even called it a lack of knowledge or ignorant or something. And I'm like, where's that come from, bitch? If you're going to make those kind of veiled accusations, then why don't you make a direct one and explain exactly what I'm ignorant of, that you're knowledgeable enough to know what ignorance looks like. I mean, obviously, you must come from a knowledge position to recognize ignorance. It's pretty much impossible to do if you yourself are ignorant. So you tell me what knowledge position you're coming from that is superior to mine, what piece of knowledge you have that enlightens you enough to pass judgment, because I'm a little suspicious. Yeah, I am. But anyway, but the cliche itself, I was thinking about it. And, generally speaking, I've liked that one, saying the idea of history is there for us to learn from. And, fool me once, my bad, fool me twice or 10 times, fool me once, you're bad, 10 times my bad. And, there's that kind of cliche that you can pile on top, in that, it's right there. History's right there for us to learn from. And if we don't, that makes us pretty goddamn stupid. But then when you look at history, what is there to learn? Except how to do things the wrong way. There aren't too many examples from history of some place that actually got it right. There really aren't. There's speculation about Atlantis or some other magical land, but we don't have any videotape of the perfect society, and the well-balanced, human interactions. We just have mythology, essentially, from history. And a lot of that has already been cooked. The books have been cooked. Just as many revolutions were, polluted by alternative motives. I would point my finger at the American Revolution. The founding fathers weren't exactly, they're a little bit tainted by their self-interest in preserving their own elitist colonies of the United States. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. So anyway, this learning from history thing, I was just trying to say, well, what is there in history to learn? It's all this moronic human behavior, just over and over. There's some good lessons, I think, in basic economics even, because there are all these people who advocate for anarchy or, libertarian types. And you could certainly point to the fact that it was those kinds of economic systems that created the original empires, that created the original borders, that was that kind of elitism of hoarding the money, hoarding the resources, that enabled individual men to pay for huge armies and conquer land. Let's see, where else did we go with that? So you could certainly see the basic mechanisms of some things play out in history, but I really don't think there's all that many lessons in the historical record about what it is to be human, and especially what it is to be human in the context of understanding our biological origins for certain now. It's only for the last couple hundred years that we've had any kind of grip at all on the notion of psychology versus intelligence versus biology. That these are all these are the elements of us, and that's a significant bit of progress in understanding. And so I think it's really, I almost say it's almost a different it's one of these plateau things. Okay, I mean you break the biology record, the biology being in control of your destinies in terms of your genetic destiny, by coming up with language and communication and eventually the condom, and that breaks, it changes the game, and now you become philosophical thought animals, because now memes start evolving, ideas start evolving. People, instead of being a nationality, they start being a kind, Christian versus Muslim, or even all the denominations of Christianity, even atheist versus Christian. So now we acquire a new identifier that has more to do with what we know or what we understand than what we are genetically formed. And so it's a different plateau, a different kind of evolution. And I'm not saying it's quite the same kind of plateau, the same kind of new game, but it sort of is a new game when all you have to work with philosophically as a premised understanding of the game you're playing is this, the death of God, and the having to settle into the cement, of biological fact, biological truth, the truth of replicating DNA, of 4 billion years of gladiator warring to build a tool-laden machine, that succeeds in surviving and getting its DNA into the future through substantially, networking of gang or town or nation warfare. That's a pretty hard place to start from. That's as a premise truth, as an accepted premise. That really does change where memes and logic can go. There's not too many happily ever after bullshit you can come up with out of that. There's not too much you can make out of those ingredients. And so to me, it's a new level of evolution of understanding, in that it's such a narrow beam. It's like taking the entire electromagnetic spectrum and then focusing in on visible light. This tiny bit of it. That's where the game is. And I would argue the game of the truth has now been substantially narrowed to this physical phenomenon that merely takes place because of properties of atomic structure, and doesn't have a mission, doesn't have a guiding force, doesn't have an ambition, doesn't have an objective, and the only question is can it accidentally, incidentally, still be of value? So even though it wasn't created to be valuable, is there really any value in it? Or is it just made out of make a mess, clean up a mess, make a mess, clean up a mess? I mean, if that's the truth of it, and I say it is, yeah, well, I'd say that's the definition of being pretty thoroughly fucked. I mean, the little game over light is starting to flicker. There's just not too far to go with that. Because making messes is stupid. And even though cleaning them up is good, making them is stupid. How are you going to get around that? Make a mess is not something you can say, yeah, that's a plan, let's make a mess, and then we'll clean it up. That's just not the definition of a rational plan. It's idiotic. Just grotesquely idiotic. I mean, just nakedly idiotic. So yeah, back to the thing. So cliches have value, but they are always kind of, you can poke a few holes in them if you pick at them. There are some rock solider ones than others, and it all depends on which ones you're picking as example. And always finding a parallel to compare something to is a good idea. A parallel story, parallel values, parallel ends. But yeah, you can't take this shit too seriously. So when somebody says, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. Well, what are the lessons of history? People are stupid. Well, that's a lesson. Okay, I'll accept that. Yeah. But you can't use crap like people never knew what was going on. Because, yeah, we have education and knowledge is evolving. So there is some point where you do actually accurately describe the round Earth, where you actually do accurately identify the sun as a nuclear engine. The truth is revealed. So the patterns of history are ones of humans often being wrong in their initial conclusions. But the truth is that we're not wrong that often anymore. Our models are a lot better. When, the weather idiots were saying I was going to get hit by a hurricane, I was sort of laughing at them. Ha ha ha. They don't know what they're talking about. But the models were right on the money. Yeah, I'm trying to clean this crap and it's not going to work because it's messy. Anyway, I'll come back and do that later. Way home or something. Anyway, is there anything else? Yeah, so I'm just saying there's not a whole lot of good lessons in history because the lessons are all what people did when they were dumb. We're smart now, so it's sort of a different game, and we have a whole new kind of problem. We have a problem where it's not on the simplistic level or the end level where, oh, there's too many people in poverty or there's too many. No, these aren't really our problems. What we're understanding is that the problem is in our psychology, and that's the hard one to break. That's the hard one to fix. Especially democratically, it's really hard to fix because quite obviously the might still doesn't go to right. That's always been a problem, and it continues to be a problem. So anyway, I think that's about enough. Very muddy here. Oh God, I am so not. I'm just not doing this. This living thing has completely eluded me. The purpose and function. Yep. So anyway, until next time.